The engines hummed like a steady heartbeat as Flight 72 climbed through the pale morning sky. In Seat 4C, a woman sat alone, her hands cupped around a warm drink she hadn't touched since takeoff. Her face was calm, unreadable, the kind of quiet that revealed nothing. To the flight attendants, she looked like any other traveler, a little tired, a little lost in thought. But her silence was not ordinary. It was practiced, disciplined, heavy with things she never spoke about. The aircraft had departed from a quiet harbor city just after dawn, headed toward a federal airfield far inland. Most of the passengers were families, business travelers, retirees flipping through newspapers. She was the last one who boarded, carrying only a single black pouch and wearing a simple gray jacket that gave no clues about who she was. At 31,000 feet, the captain switched off the seatbelt sign. People stretched, ordered snacks, unbuckled. She didn't move. She kept her gaze locked on the sky outside, soft blue, endless, peaceful. Yet her eyes held something sharper than peace, like she was tuned into a different frequency no one else could hear. Minutes later, the intercom crackled. "Folks, this is your captain. We're dealing with a minor communication glitch. Nothing major." Passengers shrugged. A few joked about old aircraft systems. She didn't laugh. She lifted her head slightly, like a wolf hearing a distant sound. She knew the difference between genuine calm and the kind of calm a pilot used when he didn't want to spark fear. The plane continued smoothly, until a vibration brushed the cabin walls. Not turbulence. Not a mechanical shake. It was something outside. She turned her head to the window, and her breath caught. Two fast-moving gray shapes sliced through the clouds, angling toward the aircraft. Fighter jets. Several passengers gasped and pointed. The F-16 streaked closer, their wings gleaming in the sunlight. The captain's voice came again, strained this time. "Ladies and gentlemen, remain seated. We are in communication with Air Command." Her pulse slowed, not from fear, but recognition. Jet escorts didn't appear for broken radios. Something else was happening. The fighters settled beside the airliner, flying tight and close. Their presence vibrated through the sky. Then, one of the F-16s dipped its wing ever so slightly. A signal. A military signal. Her stomach tightened. She had given that signal once. Not from a seat inside a commercial jet, but from a cockpit at 40,000 feet with a call sign stitched onto her chest. For the first time since boarding, she exhaled sharply. The passengers whispered nervously. Some prayed. Some stared in shock. But she looked beyond the fear. She saw details others didn't: formation spacing, altitude adjustment, the subtle wobble in one jet's tail. Someone out there was in trouble. And then, through the cabin speakers, a broken voice bled into the frequency. "Command, this is Falcon 3, fuel critical, controls unstable, requesting support." A young pilot. Frantic. Losing stability. Head snapped toward the speakers. She froze. That voice. She recognized the tone of a pilot on the edge, the kind she'd trained to overcome fear. Instinct overtook caution, and she whispered under her breath. "Hold level. Don't descend yet." The man seated beside her blinked. "What?" But she didn't hear him. Her mind was calculating angles, speed, distance. Then a new thunder roared through the clouds. Deep. Heavy. Unmistakable. An A-10 Thunderbolt burst through the haze like an armored guardian, engines growling like an approaching storm. Gasps filled the cabin. The young pilot's voice came again, this time relieved. "Thunder. Thank God." The woman closed her eyes. The sound of that engine brought back years of memories she'd buried: aerial missions, night skies, emergency rescues. They had once flown beside her. Called her name through static-filled comms. Trusted her judgment in split-second decisions. But none of the passengers knew any of that. To them, she was nobody. To the sky, she was someone it had not forgotten. They had once called her Falcon leader. The aircraft rattled slightly as the escorts tightened their formation. The A-10 drifted lower, positioning itself like a steel shield beneath the passenger jet. Conversation in the cabin turned into frightened murmurs. People clutched their armrests, eyes darting from window to window, trying to understand what was happening. She didn't blink. Her mind was already decoding what each fighter was doing. Their spacing, their speed, their angles. It all told a story the others were too scared to see. Then the intercom clicked again. The captain's voice carried a tremor he couldn't hide anymore. "Ladies and gentlemen, Air Command has instructed us to alter course. Please remain seated." The woman knew exactly what that meant. They were being diverted into a controlled air corridor, one where fighter jets could legally break rules to protect them. She stood up. The man next to her grabbed her arm. "Ma'am, where are you going?" But she didn't answer. She moved with purpose, each step steady and precise, like someone who had walked through fire before and survived. A flight attendant rushed over. "Ma'am, please sit down. This isn't safe." "I need to speak to your captain," she said calmly. "One of those pilots is losing control, and if he drops another 20 feet, he'll hit this plane." The attendant froze. What? "I used to fly with them," she said quietly. The certainty in her voice made the attendant hesitate. The woman reached into her pocket and pulled out something small and worn, a tarnished metal badge with a pair of engraved wings. The attendant's breath caught. Without another word, she stepped aside. The woman reached the cockpit door. The co-pilot cracked it open, panic tightening his features. "You shouldn't be here." "Listen to me," she said, her voice low but commanding. "Your right side escort is seconds from losing stability. If he slips, he won't fall away, he'll fall into your flight path." The captain swung around in his seat. "How do you know that?" Her eyes met his. "Because I trained him." The entire cockpit fell silent. Then the speakers crackled violently. "Falcon 3, altitude dropping, controls not responding." The woman lunged forward and grabbed the spare headset. The captain hesitated, then nodded. A familiar sharpness entered her eyes. This was the air she belonged to. She pressed the transmit button. "Falcon 3, she said, her voice calm as stone. "This is Falcon Leader." The radio went dead still. Then a stunned, trembling reply. "Ma'am? Leader, is that you?" "Yes." Her tone grew harder. "Focus on my voice. Adjust your left aileron trim, 3 clicks. Let the airflow correct your roll. Don't fight it." On the radar screen, the F-16's icon shook, then slowly steadied. A breathless voice came through the comms. "Stabilizing, it's working." "Flies." Another voice joined, deeper, seasoned, all authority. "Leader, this is Warhammer. Whoever you are, you just saved that kid's tail." Warhammer, the A-10 pilot. She almost smiled. Almost. She handed the headset back to the stunned captain. Outside the windows, the formation regained cohesion, the jets moving like a single organism again. But a knot formed in her gut. This wasn't over. Escorts didn't appear for minor emergencies. Stabilizers didn't fail by coincidence. And those unidentified shapes she glimpsed earlier, they were still out there, waiting, watching. She walked back to her seat quietly. Passengers stared at her like she had just performed magic. A mother clutched her child closer. A businessman mouthed a silent thank you. She didn't acknowledge any of them. She wasn't here for praise. She had been dragged back into a world she'd sworn she would never touch again. As she lowered herself into her seat, the captain stepped out from the cockpit. He approached her slowly, leaning closer so others couldn't hear. "Command wants to know your identity," he whispered. "They said you answered on a restricted frequency that's been sealed for years." She sighed. "Tell them they already know," she said softly. "They just didn't expect me to be in coach." The captain blinked, speechless, and went back to the cockpit. Outside, the escort pattern shifted subtly. That was no routine shift. That was a defensive wall. A wall meant to protect one person. Her. She frowned. Something was wrong. Minutes later, the cockpit door burst open again. The co-pilot looked pale. "Ma'am, command wants direct contact. They asked for you by code." "What code?" "Alpha Sierra 07. Her breath caught. A code they should never have used again. She stood, walked to the cockpit, and took the headset. Her heartbeat steadied, her voice dropping into the tone she hadn't used in years. "This is Falcon Leader." Static fizzed. Then a stern voice replied, "Leader, we thought you were dead." "Not dead," she said quietly. "Just done." A long pause. "You saved an escort unit today," the voice said. "But we've got a bigger situation. 3 unidentified craft are converging on your position. They're moving fast." She stared at the radar screen. 3 blips. No transponders. No signatures. No flight patterns that made sense. "And that's not the worst of it," Command continued. "Those things aren't tracking the passenger plane." Her pulse quickened. "They're tracking you." Her eyes narrowed. "Explain." "The moment you scanned your boarding pass, a dormant beacon activated. One that matches your final mission transponder." Her hand went to the necklace under her shirt. A metal pendant. A keepsake from her last deployment. She had never known it was still active. Someone had reactivated it. Someone wanted her found. Her fingers tightened around it. "So," she whispered, "this whole thing isn't an accident." "No," Command replied. "We believe the unknown aircraft were deployed the moment your ID hit the system." She breathed out slowly. 5 years of hiding. 5 years of silence. And someone had just blown it all apart. "Leader," Command said urgently, "listen carefully. Do not engage. Your escorts will intercept. Stay inside that aircraft." "Understood." She looked out the cockpit window at the sky thickening with clouds. At the F-16s bracing themselves. At the A-10 readying for a defensive angle. Her voice flattened. "I understand," she said. But in her chest, something old was waking up, a fire she thought had died long ago. She returned to her seat. Passengers watched her with wide, fearful eyes. She didn't look back. Her gaze fixed on the horizon, where the unknown shapes were approaching like predators closing in. "Let them come," she whispered. The sky seemed to hold its breath around her. Falcon Leader still.